everyone. Hope Christmas Day is treating you well. If you need a little break from all the festivities, you're in the right place.
Always good to have an escape route.
Right. So today we're going to dive into something kind of fascinating. Why we sometimes stick with stuff we know on a view is bad for us. Jobs, relationships, you name it. It's like we're glued to those familiar pain points.
More common than folks realize. And it's not just some surface-level psychology thing either. There's a deep evolutionary and historical basis for why that familiar, even if it's painful, feels so hard to let go of.
To unpack this, we've got some excerpts from Inklastrad text you shared, which seem to hit the nail on the head. Oh, and I stumbled across a study in Nature Communications, super interesting. It showed that uncertainty actually lights up the amygdala, like our brain's fear center.
Makes sense though, right? If you think about it from our ancestors' perspective, unfamiliar could equal danger. Predators, not knowing where to find food, harsh environments. Sticking with what they knew, even if tough, was often the safer bet. Survival instinct.
So basically, we're walking around with Stone Age brains in a modern world. No wonder we get stressed out. But Inklastrad text also pointed to those cognitive biases.
Yes. Cognitive biases, basically mental shortcuts. Efficient for quick decisions, but sometimes they lead us down some pretty irrational paths, especially when it comes to change.
It's so relatable, too, like status quo bias, that whole better the devil you know thing. Even if the devil is a job you absolutely despise, you convince yourself it's better than the unknown.
Exactly. And that ties right into loss aversion. The pain of losing something, even something bad-y, feels worse than the potential good of gaining something new. It's like our brains are hardwired to avoid loss.
So even if a job's making you miserable, the thought of leaving is scarier than staying, even if staying is harmful long-term.
Powerful stuff. And then there's the sunk cost fallacy. I'm sure we've all been there.
Oh, 100%. I've put so much time into this, I can't quit now. Even when logic says run, it's like throwing good money after bad, but with time and effort.
Right on the money. Our brains try to justify sticking with something based on past investment, instead of looking at it rationally. Like those ancient ancestors, maybe, clinging to a familiar hunting ground even when the game's moved on. Made sense then, but now can keep us trapped.
And Inklastrad text gets into some heavier stuff, too. The link between trauma and this tendency to stay in painful but familiar situations.
Yeah, sensitive topic for sure. For someone who's experienced trauma, that familiarity, even if it's negative, can give a sense of control in a world that's felt very out of control. Not about blaming anyone, but understanding how trauma shapes our choices.
And it's so important to emphasize, if you or someone you know is dealing with trauma, seeking professional help is key. But even for those of us without major trauma, holding on to familiar pain can be so damaging long-term, right?
No question. Whether it's a job, a relationship that's gone sour, or even a bad habit, clinging to that familiar hurt can have real consequences, emotionally and physically.
So what's happening in our bodies when we're constantly stressed?
Imagine being chased by a tiger, heart pounding, breathing fast, muscles tense. That's your stress response. Healthy in actual danger, BUT. When we're chronically stressed, that tiger never goes away. Body's stuck in high alert.
So that anxiety, tightness in your chest, trouble sleeping, it's not just in our heads, it's a physical reaction to prolonged stress.
Exactly. Over time, that leads to elevated cortisol, the stress hormone, weakens the immune system, ups your risk of heart disease, messes with sleep, can even contribute to anxiety and depression. Body's breaking down under the strain.
Sounds like we're almost poisoning ourselves by staying in these situations, even if a part of us feels safe because it's familiar. I felt that pull, that trapped feeling, even when it wasn't good for me. Have you ever experienced something similar?
I think we all have, in one way or another. That's what makes this such a universal topic. The encouraging part is, though, we're not powerless. We can break free, even if it seems daunting at first.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. How do we actually start escaping this familiar pain trap? What's Inklastrad text suggest?
Well, first off, got to acknowledge the tendency. Awareness is key. Recognizing we all have this pull toward the familiar, even when it's not serving us. From there, we can start exploring the specific fears driving our choices.
So it's not about beating ourselves up for feeling this way. It's about understanding it and asking, why am I holding on? What am I afraid of?
Right. And that's where journaling, therapy, mindfulness can be super helpful. Safe space to explore thoughts and feelings without judgment helps uncover those hidden fears, keeping us stuck.
Okay, but once we've identified those fears, then what? How do we actually build the courage to make a change? Easier said than done.
It's not about being fearless overnight. It's about building emotional resilience. tolerating discomfort and uncertainty without falling back into those old familiar patterns.
So we're not aiming for superhero levels of bravery, just getting a bit more comfortable with the unknown, step by step.
Exactly. Think of it like building a muscle. It takes time and consistent effort. Just like you wouldn't run a marathon without training, you can't overcome deep fears without gradually exposing yourself to what triggers them.
Bringing us back to those small changes, baby steps. Instead of a whole life overhaul, we start with something manageable, slightly out of our comfort zone, but not terrifying.
Precisely. Maybe you set a small goal related to where you feel stuck. If it's a job, update your resume or reach out to someone in your network. If it's a relationship, set a boundary you've been afraid to set.
Proving to ourselves one step at a time that we can handle the uncomfortable feelings, that the world won't end if we change our script a little.
Exactly. Each small success builds confidence and resilience, reinforces the idea that you can handle uncertainty. And don't underestimate celebrating those wins along the way either.
Good point. It's easy to get fixated on the big goal and forget to acknowledge the progress we're actually making.
For sure. Acknowledge your courage. Celebrate your resilience. Remind yourself you're on the right track, even if the path ahead still feels a bit uncertain. Welcome back. We're in the thick of it now, trying to figure out why we sometimes choose familiar pain over the unknown. Last part, we got into how our brains are kind of wired to seek out predictability and how that can make us cling to things that aren't so good for us. It's really fascinating stuff. But I'm curious, can this desire for familiarity ever be a good thing?
That's a great question. Seems like this stick with what you know thing could be helpful sometimes.
Absolutely. The same mechanisms that make us resist change can also provide stability and comfort. Think about daily routines.
Like that first cup of coffee or brushing your teeth before bed.
Exactly. They seem mundane, but they bring order, predictability. That can be super grounding, especially when things feel chaotic or stressful, like a safe haven.
So it's not about eliminating familiarity, but finding a balance. When to embrace it, when to challenge it.
Exactly. Our brains are constantly trying to balance seeking safety with exploring new things, and that balance point shifts depending on our circumstances, personality, even our cultural background.
Oh, that makes me think about how some cultures seem more risk-averse than others. Is there a connection there?
For sure. Cultural norms totally shape how we view uncertainty and risk. Some cultures encourage risk-taking, see it as brave, ambitious. Others value caution, see risk as reckless, maybe even foolish.
It's not just our individual brains then, it's the collective programming from our society.
It's complex, nature AD nurture. So important to be aware of those influences, both on ourselves and how we perceive others.
Like we all have these invisible scripts telling us how to react to uncertainty based on where we come from, what we've been taught. But what happens when we decide to embrace the unknown? Is there a flip side to all this fear and stress? Are there benefits to stepping outside that comfort zone?
Absolutely. Research shows that embracing uncertainty, taking risks, calculated ones of course, can have a huge positive impact on our well-being, even our brain function.
Really? That's encouraging. What happens in our brains when we push past that fear and try something new?
Well, studies show that when we challenge ourselves, our brains release dopamine. That's the neurotransmitter linked to pleasure, motivation, learning.
So our brains reward us for being brave.
You could say that, like a pat on the back. Good job, you did something scary and survived. And that dopamine rush can be really motivating.
Makes sense, like that feeling after a tough workout or finishing a difficult task. But you said it's not just the good chemicals. How does embracing uncertainty actually help us grow?
When we have new experiences, our brains work harder to process information, adapt to things they haven't seen before. This strengthens our cognitive flexibility, our ability to switch between tasks, perspectives, ideas.
Like mental gymnastics for our brains, making us more agile, adaptable.
Precisely. Mental exercise strengthens our minds, just like physical exercise strengthens our bodies. More adaptable, resilient, even more creative.
You're making me rethink my fear of new things. Seems like there's a lot to gain, but honestly, it still feels scary. Any tips on how to make that leap less intimidating?
Of course. Start small, just like with building resilience. Dip your toes in, test the waters.
Breaking those big goals down into smaller, manageable steps.
Exactly. If public speaking terrifies you, you wouldn't jump right into a TED Talk. Maybe start with a small presentation at work or a Toastmasters group. Build confidence gradually.
Baby steps to big leaps. But that fear of failure, it's a big part of what makes the unknown so scary. We worry about messing up, looking foolish, realizing we're not good enough. How do we deal with that?
Remember, Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the process. See it as feedback, information to help you learn and grow.
Instead of a reason to give up, it's an opportunity to course correct, learn from mistakes, and try again with new knowledge.
That's the spirit. Think of it as an experiment, testing, gathering data, adjusting based on the results. Sometimes what we see as failure is actually redirection, leads us to something even better than we planned.
Like those famous inventors, entrepreneurs who had tons of setbacks before they succeeded, they didn't let failure stop them.
They used it as fuel to keep going. Setbacks happen, but they don't define the journey. Keep experimenting, trying new things, refining the approach till you find what works.
So it's about shifting focus from fearing failure to embracing the learning process. Powerful stuff. What else can we do to make the unknown less scary?
Connecting with others who've already done it could be huge. Mentors, role models, even friends with experience in the area you're trying to change. They can offer guidance, encouragement, perspective.
Like having a guide, showing you the ropes, making sure you know you're not alone. Their experience gives insights, reminds you that you can do it too.
Exactly. Hearing others' stories, successes, any challenges makes it less daunting. We're all capable of growth. But what about when the unknown feels truly overwhelming? Not just small change, but major life stuff. Job loss, illness, a relationship ending. How do we cope with that level of uncertainty?
Those situations can be paralyzing, like the ground is shifting under you.
It's normal to feel a surge of fear then. The key is to acknowledge those feelings without letting them control you. Even in chaos, we still have choices. Focus on what you can control, even if it's just your attitude, your actions.
Finding those little bits of agency where we can still make decisions even when everything else feels out of control.
Exactly. And that often starts with taking care of yourself. Sleep, good food, exercise, connecting with people you love. Basic stuff, but makes a huge difference in how we cope with stress.
The things we tend to neglect when we're stressed, but the most important things to do for ourselves. But how do we find hope and meaning when the future is a total question mark? That feels really tough.
It's a deep question. Part of it is reframing what a good life means. We get caught up in achieving specific goals, the dream job, the house, the perfect partner. What if happiness is more about the journey, not just the destination? Finding meaning in everyday moments, even the tough ones.
Appreciating what we have now, instead of always chasing something in the future.
That's it. Life is happening now, not someday when we reach that goal. And one of the strongest ways to tap into that is through gratitude.
Gratitude. We hear it a lot, but it's easier said than done, especially when things are hard. How do we actually practice it when we're facing challenges?
It's a practice. Takes effort. Start small, a few moments each day to reflect on things you're thankful for. A cup of tea, a sunset, a kind word from a friend. By focusing on the positive, you train your brain to notice the good, even when things are tough.
Shifting our focus from what we lack to what we have, from what's wrong to what's right. Seeing the glass as half full, even when it feels like it's leaking.
Exactly. The more we practice, the more we see the world through a lens of abundance, not scarcity. Doesn't mean ignoring the challenges, just choosing to focus on the good.
Inspiring. But what about when gratitude feels truly impossible? Like when we're dealing with loss, a situation that feels hopeless. Can we still find meaning then?
Such an important question. In those times, it's crucial to let yourself grieve. Feel the pain fully. Don't force positivity or gratitude. Sometimes the most meaningful thing is to just be with your suffering. Acknowledge the loss. Honor your emotions.
Giving ourselves permission to feel what we feel. No judgment, no pressure to move on.
Exactly. Process the pain, make sense of it, find your own way to cope and heal. And in those times, connect with others who understand. A support group, therapist, a close friend who'll just listen.
It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we're not alone. People care, people want to help, people have been there and come out the other side, reaching out for support, letting others walk with us.
Those connections are incredibly healing. Even in loss, there's still beauty, meaning to be found. It might just take time.
Having faith that even in darkness, there's light. This has been so powerful. We've covered so much. From the brain science to the power of gratitude, I feel a renewed sense of hope. What's one key takeaway you hope listeners will hold on to?
We're wired to seek the familiar, but that doesn't mean we're stuck there. We have the power to choose growth, embrace the unknown, and create lives filled with meaning, purpose, even joy. It's a journey, not a destination, and there'll be bumps. But with courage, compassion, and a willingness to learn, we can navigate the unknown and become stronger, wiser, more resilient. Trust the process. Believe in your own ability to grow and change.
Beautiful. We're all works in progress, and that's okay. Life is about learning and evolving, embracing the unknown. Join us for part 3, where we'll explore practical strategies to put all this into action. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive. We've explored why we often choose familiar pain, how our brains are wired for it, even how our culture plays a role. But now, let's get practical.
Time to put all this insight into action, right?
Exactly. I've been totally with you so far, nodding along, but then I think about actually changing things in my life, and those familiar fears come right back. Where do we even begin to make those changes?
Well, English text gives us some good steps. Awareness, resilience, vision, support, and reframing uncertainty. We've talked about them, but let's get into the nitty-gritty of actually using them.
Okay, let's do it. Starting with awareness. We talked journaling, therapy, mindfulness. Anything else to help us see those hidden patterns, the fears driving our choices?
One technique that's super helpful is the 5 whys. Sounds simple, but it can be really powerful.
5 whys. So I just keep asking myself why 5 times.
Basically. Let's say you're stuck in a job you hate. First, why? Why am I unhappy? Maybe the answer is I don't feel challenged. Then ask, why not? Keep digging deeper with each why till you hit that core issue.
Like peeling back layers of an onion, or those Russian nesting dolls going smaller and smaller.
Exactly. And the fascinating thing is that core issue is often something you weren't even aware of consciously. Fear of failure, needing approval, a limiting belief you've held for years.
So it's not surface level problems, it's the heart of what's holding us back. But once we've figured that out, how do we actually build the emotional resilience to face it? Easy to say be brave, harder to do.
Remember those baby steps. That's key. Proving to ourselves little by little that we can handle discomfort, uncertainty, and come out okay on the other side. Start small, slightly outside your comfort zone, but not totally terrifying.
So if I'm terrified to quit my job, even though I know I should, I wouldn't march in and give my notice tomorrow.
Yep. Maybe start by updating your resume or reaching out to people in your network to see what's out there. Taking action, but in a way that feels less overwhelming.
Building momentum, confidence, one step at a time, so the bigger leaps don't seem so impossible later on.
Exactly. And self-compassion is crucial too. It's easy to be hard on ourselves when we're stuck, but we got to be our own cheerleaders, not our own worst critics.
So instead of beating ourselves up for being afraid, we treat ourselves with the same kindness we'd offer a friend who's struggling.
Exactly that. If your friend came to you with his fear, you wouldn't say they're weak or silly, right? You'd offer support, encouragement. Give yourself that same kindness.
Simple, but powerful. Okay, on to creating a vision for the future. We've talked visualization, SMART goals. Any other tips to make that vision feel real, achievable?
Ever tried a vision board? Visual representation of your goals using pictures, quotes, things that inspire you.
I've seen those. People usually make them with magazine clippings, like a collage of their ideal life.
That's the classic way, but you could do it digitally too, online tools, even just a Pinterest board. The point is to make it personal.
So it's a visual reminder of where we're headed, keeps our eyes on the prize even when the path feels uncertain.
Right. Powerful for staying motivated, especially when those familiar fears try to creep back in.
Let's talk about seeking support. We've said how important it is to connect with others, but how do we find the right support?
Depends what you're going through, what kind of help you need. Specific issues, addiction, grief, trauma. There are often specialized support groups in person or online.
And online forums, communities where you can connect with people going through the same thing. It's amazing how much strength that shared experience can give you.
It's true. We're not meant to go through tough stuff alone. And don't underestimate just talking to trusted friends, family. Let them know what's up. Ask for their help. You might be surprised by their willingness.
Sometimes just having someone listen without judgment makes all the difference.
Huge difference. And remember, asking for help is strong, not weak. It takes courage to be vulnerable. Most of the time, the people who love us want to help, to lend an ear.
Okay, last piece. Reframing uncertainty. How do we shift from fear to curiosity, see the unknown as an opportunity, not a threat?
One powerful way is to actually practice gratitude, even for the uncertainty itself.
Gratitude for the unknown. Sounds a little backwards.
I know, right? But when we're grateful for it, we're acknowledging that life is full of mystery. We don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Letting go of control, embracing the not knowing.
Instead of resisting, we're saying, bring it on. I don't know what's next, but I'm open to it.
That's it. And that openness create space for new things, new experiences, things we might have missed if we were stuck in the familiar.
This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. I feel like I understand this whole uncertainty thing better, and I understand myself better, how I deal with change.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, it's a journey, not a finish line. Those old fears might come back. You might feel like retreating to your comfort zone. That's okay. Keep practicing these things. Keep learning. Keep believing in yourself and your ability to handle whatever comes next.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this. It's been truly illuminating. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's been as insightful for you as it has been for us. The unknown can be scary, but it also holds potential for growth, adventure, even a little bit of magic. So go out there and embrace it.